Hello everyone, this is Merixstudio with our very first LinkedIn Live session. We are very happy to have you here in our very first time with LinkedIn Live. We are very happy to have this platform, and we are very happy to have our guests, which are Katarzyna Kaniewska, which is our user experience designer with a great proven track record and several projects behind her back, as well as Łukasz Jaruzal, business analyst, Wizdy startup founder. Guys, how are you? How do you do?
We are fine, ready to start the conversation.
Okay, Łukasz, how are you?
I can't wait to discuss. Can't wait to discuss the POCs, MVP, and prototyping.
Okay, thank you for this. I think it would be beneficial if you could tell just a few words about your proven track record, about your experience, projects that you've been working on. Kasia, perhaps you could start.
Sure. So as Mike said, I've been working, and I am still working as a UX designer at Merixstudio. So the projects I am working on are very broad, and starting from, for example, my recent ones, so in tourism industry, as well as fintech, as well as edtech, as well as gaming. So, well, sky is the limit. Yeah.
Okay, Łukasz, my great teammate. How does it look like from your perspective?
Okay, so I'm a senior business analyst here at Merixstudio, but I'm also a two-time founder, 2 startups. One of them unfortunately failed, giving me a great and necessary experience to kind of launch another product and gain traction effectively.
Okay, thank you very much. Guys, let's start, let's say, from something that could be considered as a, let's say, very initial point of initiating any startup, any absolutely new concept in terms of digital, in terms of design, in terms of functionalities. This is, I think, proof of concept. So basically, probably the most simple thing that any startup founder could potentially perform in order to verify his or her idea. So there are different kind of proof of concepts. Quite often, as Merixstudio, we are receiving inquiries in regards to, let's say, more technical proof of concepts. Can I increase the efficiency of my database? Can I speed up the rendering? Can I do this? Can I do that? But how does, from the product design perspective, look the aspect of proof of concept in the startup world?
So let me take this one. So I've been observing, I would say, a proof of concept, for example, in one of the projects, workshops actually we had. So that was a project about a very advanced conferencing. So this went actually far and beyond what the Google Classroom allowed us to do. So therefore, we had to try and find out if the functionalities that our client envisioned were actually doable, and if so, if it required a lot of extra work. So that was one of the proof of concept. So it wasn't exactly what I was responsible for. It was still a development work. And this is what usually happens in my experience. So the proof of concept gives us the answer, is this feasible or not? So this is, in many cases, just one standalone functionality that you test in meaning try to check if that's going to work or not with a limited resources. And usually the limited resources include, for example, just one developer who's checking the feasibility of something. So that's what I've been experiencing concerning the proof of concept.
Yeah, and what I can add is to just what Kasia said is that the main the proof of concept essentially proves that a certain assumption is correct and can be implemented in real life using the available technology, right? So this is actually the main point of having this exercise, building proof of concept, right? So in this model of product development, we're just leaving those frills like performance, usability, or actually everything that is customer facing. So those elements are simply not taken into consideration.
Yes, exactly. So, however, it gives a lot of actually beneficial knowledge to the investors or our clients, because they learn, first of all, can we do it or not? But also they gain some experience by this exercise. So they know, for example, if they have no previous experience in cooperation with development team, well, that gives them that hands-on experience.
Exactly.
Guys, just question in regards to the proof of concept, because when we are building a product or when we are building a service, there is let's say a certain group or even widespread of groups of potential users, and we know that the lists of functionalities are quite complex and so on. Now the question is there, for example, a risk associated with designing a particular feature or particular service that it stand alone and that perhaps cannot be verified in terms of usability, because it's just a like an isolated aspect from something that is meant to be brought in a bigger product or service? Do you think that such risk exists, and how eventually a stakeholder, a startup founder, could potentially avoid it?
So maybe I will take this one too. So in my experience, mainly the proof of concept is not that much related to the design or the users. It's more like checking the limits, or if something is feasible or not. And you can test it by trying to confirm that, yes, you can do it, or disprove it by realizing, okay, there is no point in taking so much time into the subject. But actually what you are saying is more related to the prototype or the MVP, actually, Mike. So when we have the ready prototype, we can follow a certain path, a certain scenario, and then test it with the users, meaning they start, we create a scenario, for example, from simple logging into the system, then performing a task, and then, let's say, logging out. So this is a full user experience path that we can test. And of course, we need the design there, and we need the user feedback there as well. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. By taking just this quick chance, I would like to encourage our audience to ask questions. We would like to potentially react to all the inquiries coming through your comments. So please feel free to share your questions, to provide them. We'll try to cover as many of them as possible during today's broadcast. Anyways, Kasia, thank you very much for putting a little bit of light on the proof of concept. Now, okay, so proof of concept could be potentially, or correct me if I'm wrong, a part of, let's say, a prototyping aspect. So this could be a part of, let's say, delivering your prototype, right? Now, what are, let's say, the good practices of building a prototype, and what exactly is a prototype, and what are the purposes of building a prototype in digital product development?
So I'm thinking about the prototype this way. People usually like stories, right? And when you go, let's say, to pitch your product to investors, because this is the main purpose of building PoC, one of the main purposes, I would say, of building PoCs or prototypes, is to kind of, validate initial hypothesis, assumptions, and also go and pitch the product to investors, right? So you basically tell them a story, your story, right? So to tell it successfully, first of all, it needs to be authentic. It needs to be something immersive. something, attention grabbing, this kind of things. In my opinion, crucial that it's covered, So we kind of built POCs and prototypes that we've just mentioned to gather important feedback, to build something that we can show, so our investors and our users actually have a chance to click through it, to have this feeling, have actual feeling and immersive experience in what the product is like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. So this is an opportunity for people, end users, both end users and investors, to actually experience something that we have envisioned. So it goes more into the, I would say you can be more immersed into the prototype just because it tells you a full story. So as I mentioned, from start to finish, you manage to perform a full task just by clicking through a prototype. And just to maybe shed some light, what is the prototype? So for example, if I'm creating a prototype, then it's not something that is a working software. This is more like a representation of how something might look like, but also work like. So it can be very interactive, but it can be very simplistic. Depends on what is needed, actually. Based on the feedback that we gather from the end users, we actually improve the prototype, so we iterate. So gathering feedback from people makes the prototype so much better. And I'm sure you are aware that a lot of startups, majority of them actually fail. And one of the main reasons of the failure is the mismatch between the product and the market, but also that the users do not like it, simply said. So, well, when we are creating those user testing through prototype, we are actually maybe minimizing the risk that the product will not be perfect on the market and for the users.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And we use prototypes, as Kasia said, to gather this initial feedback. It's great to use it for initial customer demand probing, and it's kind of it's paving a way to building a great MVP.
Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly. So Łukasz, I know you had some sort of the prototype in your own startup, so maybe you can just tell us a little bit about this.
Sure, of course. So as I mentioned in the beginning, my first startup I co-founded. Actually, we failed. We launched an MVP, what we called an MVP, but it was too big, in my opinion. One of the main mistakes that we did is we just started development after hours. At this time, after hours, we started developments, no user testing at this point. We just take it for granted, because a little bit of a background here. I'm very connected with the edtech industry, so the product was edtech platform for teachers, and I just thought, okay, I would like to use it, so perhaps other teachers would like to use it as well, but it's not always the case. So yeah, and we failed in the first startup. So I've learned, I gain experience and knowledge. I've read about it. How important it is to actually have this initial user testing and validate your ideas. So the second attempt, WISD, which is at this point I think it's quite successful. We launched MVP, but it all started with the process called customer development. So interviewing customers, discussing the problem, and then discussing the solution. But in the meantime, we had a process that's called the design sprint, which gave us a lot of information. We built a clickable prototype, and we showed it to users, and we showed it to investors, and thanks to it, I believe, thanks to it and all the information that we gathered, we managed to get funded by business angel.
Perfect. And also, I would also like to add, once we're talking about a prototype, that it's actually in many projects, this is the approach we are suggesting, because it's really relatively cheap to create, comparing to the full development. So let's put it this way. If I'm creating a prototype, and for example, I've been creating a prototype for an edtech, sorry, not edtech, fintech, fintech client, and it took me over 3 months. So that was just the design phase. And during that process, the prototype served not only to cover all the scenarios. Of course, the main purpose of the prototype was to show it to investors and raise money. But then it also served as a starting point to the discussion, what is needed actually within the system and what is not. So this actually opens a discussion. If we get from our clients just a functional specification, well, everyone interprets it in their own way, right? So you envision such or such functionality, which is based on what other, for example, systems or functionalities you are used to. But everyone can be used to different things, so they can understand, should be the same thing, but it turns out in a different way. So if we have this prototypes or something tangible, something solid enough, everyone can see it and then discuss what works, what doesn't work, and we discuss the details of it, not just a vision or a concept. So this actually, well, helps a lot in terms of conversation about the project and the shape of it.
Okay, guys, you touched several purposes of building a prototype, and this was fundraising for sure, verifying the availability for the market, and slightly slowly we've been also touching an aspect in which the prototype, let's say clickable prototype, imagine it one way or another, could become a blueprint for a development team. So basically, prototype which can be used. Listen, this is the prototype of an application or a service that we'd like to build, and basically a development team consisting of 2 or 4 or 6 or 8 people could basically develop it. Now the question would be, do you think that this is possible to achieve all these goals with a one prototype? So have something to present to the potential investors. That's the one thing. Validate the market to, let's say, survey potential group of users. Listen, do you find this attractive, and what would you improve within the service? And eventually later on to provide it to the engineering team and listen, guys, I want to have this developed. Do you think that all those purposes can be covered with one prototype?
So, building a product is actually a process. So I think that we need to, as founders, we need to verify our assumptions as many times as possible. We also can't take every user feedback as something that we should implement. We also need to, take a closer look at this feedback and validate it, because there'll be people that love our product and those who simply don't. So as you've mentioned, in my opinion, there is a core that we can call the prototype, but we cannot say that we can build it once and it will serve all the purposes, right? So it will be used for pitching investors. It will be used for development. Of course, it can be, but there will always be changes because it's so initial phase that I can't imagine how lucky you are, having this perfect prototype, moving it smoothly to MVP phase, launching without any changes, right?
So
just one question, quick one on this. So we think that this could be, let's say, a process. We are building a prototype, and and when we are in a conversation with investors and with potential users, this is, let's say, a prototype work in progress. And so these are those 2 activities that will need to be performed before pushing it to the development team.
I believe yes, because like the prototype can be described as a model of product development, focused on answering those how questions. So how the application will look like, how it will be made, what technology we can use, how the users will interact with it. And by validating it, those assumptions, because these all are hypotheses and assumptions, we kind of change it a little bit, modify it, and discussing with development teams, discussing with investors, brainstorming internally with co-founders, pushing it forward, right?
So I would, I think I have a bit of a different angle here. So how to put it simply? Okay, so if I'm creating a prototype that is aimed at user testing, it's a totally different prototype than the one I am creating, where the goal is, to help the developers develop the app or system or the project. Yeah. So what I mean by that. So for example, if I go with the user testing, as I said, I usually cover just the happy path, meaning we agree together with the client what has to be achieved, what do we want to test. So let's say I have a booking platform and I want to book a stay, a holiday, my holidays, right? So my main goal here is to do the booking. So I do it interactively enough so that the user thinks it's the actual thing, right? But at the same time, I do not cover the edge cases. I do not cover the possible errors in the system. I don't cover most of the cases, I would say, by that interactive prototype that is actually for user testing. Why? Because there is no need, actually. We don't want to check every possible scenario because the whole system will test that. So there is an extra work that is not needed at that point. We want to check different things. However, if I'm working hand in hand with developers, they actually require from me different states, right? So different statuses of the system. So how the system behaves in such or such situation. So this way I create some extra pieces of prototype just so they know how the behavior of the system should be reflected. So I would say there are two different things. Of course, the developers can use the interactive prototype as a starting point. And sometimes our clients come to us with the prototype. And this is really cool, actually, because we know what we are talking about. We know how they envisioned it. There is also an extreme case in that scenario, I would say. So when the client covers every single possible case, and the risk of that being, we go with them to the workshops and we say, okay, this is perfect. However, with the limited resources, there is no way we can implement it. So we need to cut a lot of functionalities. And then the prototype, without some functionalities, looks empty. And the client is actually very used to how it looked like as a full working product. So that can be actually painful. And we experienced this a couple of times that, well, they actually envisioned it. They drew this. So they treat it as a almost finished product. And then we just come to them and say, oh, is this a must-have? So for the tough discussion usually taking place during our product design workshops, we say together, not really, right? So this is a very nice to have, but not a must-have. And I'm smoothly, I guess, moving to the MVP approach, which is also connected with the hard decisions, so cutting a lot of things out of the scope.
Guys, and this was the question that I wanted to address, and especially I wanted to address to Łukasz, because I know that you have your lesson learned in the edtech world. So the question would be how to avoid going beyond MVP, beyond the minimum viable product at the beginning of, let's say, the design process, and while, let's say, releasing the product, how to avoid involving too much of your resources, of your manpower, of your funds beyond something that isn't feasible at the moment for the market.
So one important thing while building an MVP is to really focus on those things that are highest priority, not very important, but top priority, right, in the project. So we need to pick a feature or two, but it all also depends on the project, right? Because sometimes it's not so easy, and sometimes we are even not able to build an MVP because it's required to build a full product to be competitive in the market, right? So it's not always like we go strictly the path like PoC, prototype, then MVP. Sometimes we just need to build a product. It's how it is, right? But answering your question, so too many times today, and I made this mistake, as I said myself, too many times these days we see MVPs that are released to market that they just try to do too much, they try to do too much at once, and they do it all poorly. And the very essential thing, I think, is that the purpose of MVP is to release it quickly as possible. But by this word quickly, I don't mean reduction in time. I don't mean reduction. I mean actually reduction in the feature set, and not the quality. So I don't know if it's answering your question, but more or less, I think like MVP is, at the first sight, it's pretty easy to understand the concept. We need to release something quickly, fast, and something that's, we can validate later on, finding our product market fit. But it's not so easy in real life to just cut the scope, because the first-time founders really have this tendency to love the product so much, they're obsessed with the product. And the second-time founders, very often, they are focusing on other things like distribution and this kind of matters. So we need to have it in mind.
Okay, guys, and what do you think about the situation that we are actually dealing with every day? I mean, we are approached by people who are, let's say, specialists in their industries, right? Generally, for example, bread and butter of a company that we're working for is custom software development. Now, we are approached by representatives of a variety of industries, right? And how a person that is, let's say, more project-oriented, but didn't spend, let's say, 8 of 12 years only in fintech or edtech, or let's say any other industry, just one single industry, how such person can potentially support building the MVP, eliminating unnecessary work, features, and so on, and support decision-making process of such a stakeholder.
So let me take this one. So this is something we are working on during the project design workshops. I'm not a specialist in every single domain that I've been working on in terms of design. So this is normal, I would say. However, what we do and what supports us are the tools we have. So we try to empathize with the users, as well as with the clients. So one of the tools that is very broadly used by us is creating the personas. So I'm sure everyone heard about this and think it's useful, a useful tool. I hope so, at least. So by creating personas, we get into end users' shoes. So we understand what are the pain points of people who will be the end users of the solution. What we also do and how we assist our clients is trying to understand the business model as well. So we don't have to be specialists in every domain to understand that some business models are more risky than others. And we know this by experience with the previous clients, for example, or as Łukasz first-hand experience as well is taken into account. So another tool that we sometimes are using is in shaping the MVP, what is important and what is not, is, for example, creating a matrix for our users and comparing the functionalities. What I mean by that is we select, let's say, the core functionality, the one that is crucial to the existence of the system and gives the most value. So by comparing this one functionality with other functionalities in terms of business value, as well as, for example, the complexity of creating it, it's so much easier for our clients to make the tough decisions. So I like this, let's say, I like this functionality, but it's going to take twice as much time as the functionality that is maybe good enough for the very first version of the product. And just one more thing, as I said, we create the personas, right? So sometimes it's better to actually focus on your either primary persona being a group of users that is the most numerous or the most important to you, or giving you the most revenue, right? So keeping that in mind, it's easier to assist in that sort of tough decisions. And even if you don't know exactly every single detail about a domain that this project is about.
Okay. Łukasz, anything to add?
Oh, I've been talking too much.
I think we've covered the basics. Yeah.
Okay then, and
I will add one more thing, and this is, I suppose, a good piece of advice. So we talked previously, well, internally, that it's great when people come to us with a prototype, because it gave, well, they have made a lot of effort for them to create something. So this is also something that the investors are interested in, because they understand you have made a lot of effort to make this work, right? Maybe you haven't developed it yet, but still you have spent hours and hours on thinking how this would work. So this shows your persistence. And testing the prototypes or the, well, your idea is actually a great opportunity. But this piece of advice I told you about, so I would encourage everyone to actually maybe test this this idea of yours maybe with not your closest friends, because the thing is, they like you, okay? They don't want to disappoint you. So if you test something with them, I can almost 99% of cases, they will say it's perfect. And you want someone who is objective, right? So maybe
critical to, who will, let's say, look at your product, look at your design, look at your concept in cold blood, almost literally.
Exactly, because you know, in the future when you develop it, this is not just going to be your friends who just, you know, say, oh, great job, you've done so well. It's going to be a lot of users, and they might be demanding, because if they are paying for something, why shouldn't they, right? They have some expectations. So if you, well, test it with more realistic, I would say, group of people, it also gives you more valuable feedback.
Okay then, thank you very much for this. Guys, we have a little bit of questions in questions and answers section, and there is Mr. Andriy Bezugli asking us about the expected duration of the design sprint. He's also asking about our pricing. I would be glad to schedule a call with him and to discuss it further. But Katarzyna, if you could put a little bit of light on the concept of the design sprint, on the expected duration and everything around it.
I'm not sure about everything, but okay, so it usually takes a week. And this is like a development of product in 1 week. So it's very short, and each day focuses on different activity. First, empathizing with the users, understanding what has to be done. Then also there is a prototyping phase and validating the ideas with the users, right? So for example, if you want to test the idea with the end users, it's actually perfect if we go to the client and test it in their natural environment, because well, that's how people are going to use the software, etc. So this is like a whole process of creating from idea to some testing and feedback in just 1 week.
What I can add to this, because I have a great experience with design sprints. I just love them, and I always recommend founders, if you are in this initial stage, idea stage, you have this idea of this it's worth exploring, maybe you think. So I always recommend to start with the customer development by Steve Blank. First initial interviews with customers about the problem, leave the solution part for later on, and then just kind of stop in the middle after those first initial interviews and do the design sprint. It's a great exercise. It will give you so much insights. You have this, you have those screens or wireframes or even clickable prototype after the workshop. It depends how you approach this, because there are many ways, right? But totally recommend design sprint and then carrying on with a customer development. In my opinion, it's a perfect start for every idea that you want to turn into a real product.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Guys, I think absolutely atomic question coming from Dorota Wieczorek. Our teammate, we're not hiding that fact. She is asking about the eventual necessity of going through all 3 steps that we covered today. So basically, proof of concept, prototype, and MVP. Do you think that every project, every initiative demands basically going through all 3 of those processes?
No. The simple answer is no. Of course not. It all depends on the stage of the product development, what you want to achieve, the market, so many different factors. But the short answer is really you don't need to go through everything: POC, then prototype, then MVP. Sometimes you even, I think you sometimes are not required to do any of that. You just can build a product if you want. It's possible.
However, highly unlikely. Just one thing to add about the 3 stages. It's not a continuum. We mix them. We mix them a lot. So, well, for example, maybe we did not highlight it enough, but the proof of concept idea is mainly used for example, technology or solutions that are new, right? So if you want to test the limits, test the feasibility, then go through proof of concept. But if you want a new, I don't know, mailing solution, you know that there are like thousands of them already existing. You don't need to test if it's possible to do it. You know it. So the same with prototype. We can actually skip this phase and use the prototyping technique while creating the MVP. So it's Well, no. Short answer being still no. We don't need all three of them as a continuum.
Yeah, and what I can add to this is even after, let's say, even after you launch your MVP, you're already in the market, right? You can still have design sprints regarding the new features that you want to introduce and show your clients. It's not like it's finished, right? At this point, and you just build something. You can use prototyping, you can use PoC, you can use design sprint or other workshops just to try to validate every single feature if you want.
Sure thing. Thank you very much, guys. I wanted to put a little bit of light on our today's conversation. First of all, I hope that our audience enjoyed or took at least some takeaways from today's session. We are not hiding the fact that today's session, today, LinkedIn Live, Merixstudio Live, is a proof of concept. Basically, ladies and gentlemen, we are trying out a new way of communicating with you, sharing knowledge, something that we really, really love to do. If you have any ideas in regards to what kind of aspects, what kind of topics we could potentially cover in upcoming sessions, please let us know. Currently, they are not on regular basis. We will be doing them quite ad hoc, but we really, really hope that at some point we will be doing them quite frequently. So if you have any ideas, any questions related to the product design, user experience, as well as other aspects of basically agile project management, service design, software engineering, front-end, back-end, and basically developing mobile as well as web products and services, please let us know. We would be glad to hear it from you. We are happy to cover those questions, and the tougher questions, more difficult questions are always more attractive, and we will receive them with gratitude, basically. Guys, Katarzyna, Łukasz, thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for sharing this knowledge together with us. I hope that we will have a chance to see with you soon, and I hope that our audience, enjoy it as much as we did.
We hope so too, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, guys. Take care.
Okay, dear LinkedIn family, have a great day. US East Coast is probably showing up at the office, while Europe is looking to the watches, thinking about leaving the offices. Anyways, have a great day. Thank you. See you soon. Bye.
See you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.